Well, let's move on to your tip of the week, Eric, here. And a lot of what we were just talking about is sort of one-time project specific, but you're going to be talking a little bit about an end user need among SMBs out there right now that is ongoing and forever.
Well, I mean, it's absolutely, and this is another one of those scenarios, Rich, that it's never going away. The opportunity is never going away. The risk is never going away. It's just going to keep getting larger and more pronounced, right? The elephant in the room being security, but not just security. We talk a lot about cybersecurity and security on this show, Rich. I'm going to make a bold statement, and I'm going to say that it's going to be shifting to compliance. We're going to be shifting this cybersecurity focus and need more toward compliance as MSPs addressing the needs of our end clients, whether that be an SMB client, mid market, enterprise, you name it. I think that over time, my crystal ball, Rick, tells me that more and more things are going to be regulated. You know, at notwithstanding, this CrowdStrike situation that we've got going on currently as we're recording this show, right? More and more things are going to be regulated. And the things that we thought would never be regulated from a business perspective will become regulated at some point in the future. I got a spidey sense about this stuff. So, what is it that MSPs can be doing, Rich, to meet this existing regulatory compliance opportunities that they have with some of their customer segments? I know some MSPs that I've worked with are kind of shying away from compliance. They'll do the cybersecurity stuff, they'll do the email, antivirus, anti-phishing. They'll do the DMARC compliance stuff. They'll do the, end user security awareness training. But they're firmly planted in the, I'm using air quotes now, unregulated client markets, right? The target audience. So because compliance can seem like a very daunting, challenging beast, if you will. I know that we've done surveys, Rich, at Channel Mastered, asking partners about their sense of why they're not moving into these areas. And a lot of them say it's the risk. Some of them won't even touch cybersecurity because they think it's risky. Well, guess what, folks? That train is coming, right? We have to be able to help our clients secure their infrastructure, their applications, their behavior, their data, et cetera. And this does not mean that you are responsible for the cybersecurity and compliance of your clients' organizations. I know, Rich, that a lot of partners get the cyber liability insurance, data information request form from their clients, and they say, "Hey, will you please fill this out because I don't know what they're talking about." And
Of
there's
your
a specific question on that questionnaire that says, "Who is responsible for cybersecurity in your organization?" I know some MSPs that think they should put their name in there. And I'm here to say, no, that is your client's name that goes in there. All you're doing is you're delivering a specific set of services to help them meet a technical objective or a cybersecurity objective or an insurance requirement or a compliance requirement. You are not responsible for that. Now, Rich, that doesn't mean that, when things go bad as they do once in a while, that you may not be, served to go testify. But if you are only delivering a set of services in your statement of work, Rich, that says, these are the things I am delivering to you. None of them say that I am responsible or I bear the responsibility for any of this stuff. You're just delivering these set of services. And you should be in a better position than not. So what do we do when compliance comes our way? We have to look at it from the same lens. Rich, we know many great vendors that serve MSPs that help them assess compliance for their clients, gives them a checklist of every type of different, regulatory framework you can imagine. And here's the checklist of where they fail, where they need work. Here's what you do. Here's what you do. And you can slowly start chipping away at those compliance requirements to then provide the client a report that demonstrates that they are maintaining their compliance. Again, you are helping them assess and deliver these changes in their processes in their business so that they can demonstrate that they're in compliance with that regulatory requirement. So, three quick tips: stay informed, keep up to date with the latest regulations and compliance requirements of the clients you are serving or the prospects you intend to serve. Sometimes the best qualifying question to get someone to say yes to an assessment, Rich, is: do you understand what your compliance regulation requirements are for your business? If the client says no, and you say, well, let me get back to you on that, that's not very, confidence inducing, is it, Rich? You've got to be able to say, well, look, here's what you need to be adhering to in order to and you have to demonstrate compliance against that. Allow us to do an assessment for you and let you know where you fall and charge them for that, right? This is work that you're doing that adds a tremendous amount of value and can keep them out of trouble later on. Use compliance management tools like the great vendors that I just mentioned. There are a lot of great vendors that provide compliance assessment, compliance management tools, and give you the step-by-step process that you can optimize. Or if it's the client's responsibility to do some of these things, then you can assign those tasks to them. But you're working together. Remember, they're responsible for that. You're just delivering these services to help them demonstrate compliance. And then, cherry on top, when you're mature enough, assign a dedicated compliance officer, the role in your organization. It's almost, Rich, like a VCISO or VCIO, but it's a compliance officer that basically manages all of the activities that your team is doing to demonstrate compliance for these end clients. So imagine someone that's basically having regular meetings with clients, whether those are monthly or quarterly. Think of it as a QBR, but for compliance, and going over the things that are still outstanding, where the client stands, and managing that process moving forward. There's a ton of opportunity here, Rich, for MSPs.
And I think that's a really, really critical point. It's funny, as it happens, I dedicated a Channelholic post to this topic just a few weeks ago, because there is a ton of opportunity. There's a ton of need out there among businesses of every size for assistance with compliance requirements. MSPs are, from a certain perspective, ideally situated to help their customers with those requirements. And like you said, Eric, most of them are really kind of terrified of getting into that space. And the risk is one of the huge hurdles that keeps them from doing that. Another is the complexity. It's like, how am I ever going to master HIPAA, for example, if I've got clients, in the healthcare space, and how do I keep up with those requirements as they change and so on over time? And so, I totally get it. Why people are very reluctant to get in. Some things to think about that. It's sort of like, you can throw your hands up about security because you're worried about the risk there, but your customers are going to get hacked and they're going to blame you anyway, right? Because you're supposed to be my outsourced IT guy. Why didn't you keep that from happening? And telling them, well, that's because you refused to pay for the security services or whatever, isn't really going to get the job done. It's sort of similar with compliance. You're likely to get some of that blame if something goes wrong, during an audit or something like that, and you're just leaving a lot of money on the table. So a key thing that I would add, the software, that those vendors you talked about, that will actually simplify this a great deal. So if you are intimidated by the complexity of these regulations, these tools are designed to understand all of that for you so that you don't have to continually, read trade journals dedicated to healthcare compliance and stuff like that. The tools are keeping track of that for you. But there are some things that you will need to know how to do despite that. They're easier things to learn, but we're talking here about compliance. In the industry, a lot of the experts talk about GRC, governance, and regulatory compliance. And the governance piece of that is, I think, the sort of services piece, in addition to the assessments that you were talking about, that MSPs can and should be thinking about doing. So we're going to get you in a position where you are compliant. And then the governance service that we're providing is kind of keeping you compliant. And that software can help you with some of that. Some of that you're just going to need to take some responsibility for, but it's easier to do easier to learn. And then the last thing I'll say, Eric, because this is kind of where you began, and this goes back to the risk issue, is I really do encourage MSPs to get into compliance because of the scale of the need and the opportunity. Talk to your attorney first and make sure your master services, make sure you're covered basically on what you're promising and what you're not, for all the reasons you outlined.
Yeah, great final thought there, Rich. Yes, always have your legal team review any agreement, any document that ties you to a client and your responsibilities and their responsibilities. It'll protect you, and Rich, in the best case, it'll protect your clients as well, right? And you know, you're absolutely right in terms of the approach, right, of assessing and then addressing and then demonstrating. I think those are kind of the three things that MSPs have an opportunity to do, and it's it's a big conversation. It's daunting, but if you're not delivering these services because you feel you're at too much risk, and what happens is what you described potentially, Rich, is they get hacked and now they blame you and now they're dragging you into court because you haven't gotten your agreements looked at by your legal team and you haven't done anything to, help guard against that, and hopefully that never happens. But the other thing is also true, that they never get hacked, but then you don't deliver these services to them and your competition comes and knocks on the door and takes them away from you as a client of yours. You're not doing this stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's a really, really important point. You're leaving money on the table if you're not doing it. You're also opening the door to somebody else who can and will do it. And always a dangerous thing to do.